GLS is pre-tensioning the umbilicals at this very moment. You can see them as they run down the rocket. That's getting them ready to detach. At liftoff, those arms will swing away. We'll let go of the rocket in a clockwise direction. T-minus 8 minutes and counting. The GLS is performing up to 100 commands per second, including configuring ground systems for power transfer to the rocket. GLS is turning on cameras, recording video inside and outside the crew module to collect data for engineers. Purging the aft skirt booster with high flow nitrogen. Clear out any hydrogen gas that may be there. You can see the crew access arm is already retracted. When there is crew during Artemis II, it would happen at T-minus 6 minutes. But out of abundance of caution, they went ahead and retracted the arm well ahead of liftoff. Want to point your attention to the base of the mobile launcher. If something wasn't done to reduce the power from the pressure caused by the rocket's ignition and thunderous sound, it could damage the rocket. So the ignition overpressure and sound suppression system will flood the mobile launcher with water. You'll see that sequence start at T-minus 17 seconds. Now coming up in less than 30 seconds, the ground launch sequencer will start bringing the high energy systems online, starting with core stage pressurization. Firing room 1 is completely silent as they listen for the next call.
GLS's go for core stage tank pressurization.
The core stage tank is now pressurizing to flight levels. The replenish valve to the liquid hydrogen tank now closing. The liquid oxygen tank will come a little later. Now we're arming the Orion ascent pyros and transfer to internal power. The launch abort system, or LAS jettison motor, is now armed. On this flight, the abort motor is inactive because there is no crew on board. Up next is the flight termination system, or FTS, which gives the Space Force the ability to destruct the rocket if it goes in the wrong direction. Let's listen in for that.
GLS's go for FTS arm.
The flight termination system is now armed. Coming up at 4 minutes and 40 seconds, a big moment. This is where the RS-25 engines and their bleed go to high flow. It's been a little tricky to dial in.
GLS's go for LH2 high flow bleed check.
Good word, we've passed that. The cryo team got the LH2 engine bleed pressure loop dialed in. They are now at the right temperature for launch. Countdown continues. T-minus 4 minutes, 15 seconds. Up next, GLS fires up the KPUs. Those are high-speed turbines which provide pressure to hydraulic pumps that steer the RS-25s. Stands for Core Stage Auxiliary Power Unit Start.
GLS's go for core stage APU start.
That now leads to the thrust vector control test at T-minus 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That can proceed now, and we will see the engines gimbal at the bottom of the core stage. At T-minus 3 minutes and 10 seconds, you will hear the go for purge sequence 4. That's a helium purge of the 4 core stage engines downstream of the propellant valve, getting the air and moisture out.
GLS is go for purge sequence 4.
And in just a few seconds, GLS will close the core stage LOX vent, liquid oxygen. The white vapor cloud caused from the super cold gaseous oxygen condensing the water in the atmosphere will disappear. You see it coming out there now. There it goes, close. LOX vent closed, pressure rising in the core stage LOX tank to flight levels. Coming up in 15 seconds, look for that thrust vector control actuator test. Engines will gimbal. And there they go. The 4 core stage RS-25 engines gimbaling around, testing the ability to steer the rocket into space. They will operate at 109% performance. Each RS-25 throwing down 500,000 pounds of thrust. All 4, 2 million pounds. All together with the boosters, 8.8 million pounds of thrust.
GLS is go for upper stage to internal power.
Now the upper stage has gone to internal power. So power is removed from the rocket's upper stage, the ICPS, and it's been switched to battery power. The same milestone is coming up for the core stage at T-minus 1 minute and 30 seconds.
GLS is go for core stage to internal power.
The rocket's core stage, which houses the 3 flight computers, is now on battery power. So there is no more hold time available because there's no more margin on the batteries. So if we have a hold, we'd have to recycle back to T-minus 10 minutes and recharge those batteries. The count continues. A note now, shortly after liftoff.
1 minute.
Shortly after liftoff, Mission Control Houston will take control of the rocket, and my colleague, Leah Cheshire, will take over commentary. T-minus 50 seconds and counting. Coming up at T-minus 33 seconds, the GLS will hand off control to the ALS. This is the autonomous launch sequencer. On board the rocket, it will take over command and control of the rocket. But the ALS will check, make sure there's no holds coming from the ground up and
Go for ALS.
And we are go for ALS. The Space Launch System is now counting down to liftoff of Orion on its maiden voyage to the moon. Launch team can no longer recycle the count. Sound suppressor water now flowing
15.
under the ML. And here we go.
10.
Hydrogen burn-off igniters initiated. 7, 6, 5. 4 stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. Boosters in ignition. And liftoff of Artemis I. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
All 4 RS-25 engines on the core stage and 2 solid rocket boosters now propelling the vehicle at 128 miles per hour. Hearing good control on the roll from teams in Mission Control Houston. All good calls so far. Now 30 seconds into the flight of Artemis I. First milestone will be for the vehicle to pass through max Q at about 1 minute and 9 seconds into launch. This is the greatest period of atmospheric force on the rocket. SLS now traveling 607 miles per hour. You're looking at 8.8 million pounds of maximum thrust. Quiet here in the loops in Mission Control. The 4 core stage engines are throttling down ahead of passing through max Q. Now 1 4 core stage engines are back at maximum thrust. The next major milestone will be for the solid rocket boosters to cut off and jettison about 2 minutes and 11 seconds into the flight, so about 30 seconds from now. Again, quiet here in Mission Control Houston as teams continue monitoring the flight of Artemis I. We're now 16 miles downrange from the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center, traveling over 2,800 miles per hour. Back for solid rocket booster shortly after. Confirmation that the solid rocket boosters have separated, these 177-foot boosters. Now the core stage continues to power the flight of Orion, all 4 RS-25 engines firing, traveling over 3,400 miles per hour, 46 miles downrange. 2 minutes and 36 seconds into the flight. Hearing nominal calls here in Mission Control Houston. We've still got 4 good engines on the core stage. Next up, we'll be looking for the service module fairing to separate. This is 3 15 by 15-foot fairing panels, providing structural support, protecting the service module. Those will separate at about 3 minutes and 11 seconds into flight, and very shortly thereafter will be followed by the launch abort system separation. Just over 3 minutes into the flight of Artemis I, now traveling over 4,060 miles per hour, 83 miles downrange. We just had confirmation that the service module fairing has separated. And that the launch abort system pyros have fired, separating those from Orion as well. For future crew members, we just heard the call for 3-engine press, meaning if SLS were to lose an engine at this point in the mission, we could still achieve a nominal mission. We would just have an extended main engine cutoff time. However, we still have 4 good engines, all at maximum thrust right now, powering the first flight of Artemis at 5,200 miles per hour, 148 miles downrange. We're 4 minutes and 16 seconds into the flight of Artemis I. So far, we've had a clean ascent. We saw those solid rocket boosters jettison about 2 minutes and 11 seconds after liftoff. Shortly after, we had the service module panels fairings separate, as well as the launch abort system. The launch abort system was inert for this flight, except to perform this separation. Those 4 core stage engines will continue to fire and power the flight of Artemis I, now traveling over 6,800 miles per hour, 229 miles downrange. Booster flight controller reports that the engines are looking good. Our core stage main engine cutoff time is about 8 minutes and 3 seconds. We are now 5 minutes and 11 seconds into the flight, 7,656 miles per hour. Again, 4 good core stage engines, those 4 RS-25 engines. The last time those core stage engines flew, they were taking space shuttles to orbit, and now with upgraded capabilities, they're launching the future of human spaceflight. Five minutes, 42 seconds into the mission, we are now traveling 8,800 miles per hour, 345 miles downrange from the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center. Again, we are anticipating core stage main engine cutoff at about 8 minutes and 3 seconds. And about 10 seconds later, we'll see core stage separation, at which point Orion and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage will be flying free. Now traveling over 10,000 miles per hour, 6 minutes and 15 seconds into the flight of Artemis I, 427 miles downrange. Quiet here on the loops in Mission Control Houston. Teams continue to monitor this first flight. About a minute and a half now until that core stage main engine cutoff time. Our 4 core stage engines continue to fire at maximum thrust. Coming up on 7 minutes since launch today, now traveling over 12,800 miles per hour, 563 miles down here in Mission Control, Houston. As we prepare for main engine cutoff, the 4 RS-25 engines are beginning to throttle down. "30 seconds now until core stage main engine cutoff. All 4 engines continue to throttle down. Now 7 minutes 45 seconds into the flight, traveling over 16,000 miles per hour. Continuing to hear good calls here in Mission Control, Houston. We're standing by for core stage main engine cutoff. And we have confirmation of core stage main engine cutoff. Orion is now in Earth's orbit. The flight dynamics officer reports that we have a nominal main engine cutoff. And we just heard the call for core stage separation. That means Orion and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage are now flying free from the core stage of the Space Launch System. The next milestone will be solar array deploy approximately 18 minutes after liftoff. But before Orion stretches its wings, let's check back in with our friends at Kennedy Space Center and hear all about what it was like to hear the rocket roar off the launch pad. Megan and Kayla, I've got to hear all about it.
Well, if you're just joining us, welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center, where we just watched Artemis I launch, our first step towards our next adventure into deep space. As Leah said, I'm NASA's Megan Cruz, and this is NASA astronaut Kayla Barron. And I'm kind of still giddy and speechless. I don't even know how to explain how I'm feeling right now.
I feel the same way. This is the first launch that I've been able to watch in person. And I've got to say, it was incredible. It took my breath away and I was tearing up. Just what an amazing accomplishment for this team, this international team, people who have been dedicating their careers to getting this rocket off the ground and taking the first step to getting a crew on that vehicle back to the moon. It was just incredible.
Yeah, this is a moment I think that we're all going to remember where we were when we saw this sort of thing, you know what I mean? And it was great to see, again, when we entered into terminal count, everybody here just started cheering, you know, coming out to get a really good view. And boy, I mean, it lit up the night sky and it just shook everything around us. Did you feel that? Like in my bones, I felt that.
Oh yeah. The cool thing is just kind of the delay between what you see and what you hear, because of course the sound travels a little bit slower. And it was just amazing. We train for everything, and so when we're in that capsule waiting for launch, we're just running our procedures. You could almost, trick us and say that we were in the simulator and it wasn't real. But like in that moment of liftoff, when the thrust builds underneath you, like we saw it today, it's just hard not to be overwhelmed by the emotional experience, the excitement, the joy of that moment. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think we can't say it enough. This team really deserves for the moment. When I heard that we got into terminal count, it was, I felt a sense of relief and excitement for them that I think everybody here did. You know, we really wanted them to succeed. We really wanted to see the launch today. And wow, I will never forget this.
Me neither. It was an incredible experience to be here and see that happen.
Yeah. Was there anything that was particularly surprising to you? Again, this is your first launch. You know, what were you expecting?
I think we also had a nighttime launch for our launch. And so I think one thing you underestimate is how much it lights up the night sky.
Yes.
We were able to watch it all the way
moon there, and the trajectory of the rocket looked like it was flying. I mean, I was like, oh, I'm so. Being in the line.
Let's
comm check. In the room. Can you guys hear me? No. Hey, Jeremy, can you see if you could turn something on there for the microphone? The press site can hear me, but the room can't. The room can't. You can hear me? Because the guys. I don't know what he's telling me to do.
is here.
Can you guys hear me?
Pam Melroy.
Oh, there we go. Well, for once, I might be speechless. So you guys know I have talked a lot about appreciating the moment that you're in. And we have worked hard as a team. You guys have worked hard as a team for this moment. This is your moment. It is not by chance that you are here today. So I want you to look around. This history of a first. Come along. Once in a career, maybe. But we are all part of something incredibly special, the first launch of Artemis. What you have done today will inspire generations to come. So thank you. Thank you for your resilience. You know, I said at the pre-test briefing, the harder the better the view. We showed the Space Coast tonight. What a beautiful view it is. So congratulations. So we got a couple of traditions here in launch control. And the first one is when you're in the position for the first time. My launch director scissors. And I'm going to get my tie cut by here. Anyone who wants their tie cut will be making the rounds in the firing room. You got your console chiefs. If they want to do it, that's fine. If you want me to do it, you might have to wait a little while, but I'll stay all night if I have to. It'll be my pleasure. I'm going to take care
Tom. We just got to hear her talk to the team, and one thing that really stuck out to me that she said is that they've really earned their place in history. We're coming up on solar array deploy. Let's go on to Leah.
Thanks, Megan. And yes, we're here in Mission Control Houston, monitoring the Artemis I mission and the first flight of Orion atop the Space Launch System. So far, we saw successful liftoff at 1:47 a.m. Eastern Time, all the way through separation from the core stage. We now have Orion and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage flying free. And we've just heard that we have initiated solar array deploy. So we are turning our focus to that. The spacecraft was running on battery power, but stretching these wings will allow it to stop relying on those batteries and significantly extend the time it can stay in space. So solar array deploy takes about minutes. We have 4 to deploy and latch. These will provide power to the spacecraft on its journey to distant retrograde orbit and all the way back to Earth. Once these are properly configured, again, Orion will no longer need to rely solely on battery power. And we expect this to be done about 30 minutes after liftoff. Right now, we're 19 minutes since liftoff today. Orion is now traveling 17,175 miles per hour. We're continuing to hear good calls here in Mission Control Houston from the flight controllers monitoring the mission. A little bit about these solar arrays as we wait. Again, we heard the call that the deploy has been initiated. We'll hear a little bit more about that once they start to unfold. These 4 solar arrays generate 11 kilowatts of power, which is enough electricity to power 2 3-bedroom houses, and they have a wingspan of 63 feet. Just one of these 6.5 by 6.5 foot panels has 1,250 solar cells. So you're looking at a total of 15,000 solar cells. Now, we just heard the call that all 4 solar arrays have been released. So we initially heard the initiation call. That command had been sent. Now those 4 solar arrays are released. Again, this is about a 12-minute process. The solar arrays will deploy straight, and you're getting a live view right now. This is really exciting. They'll eventually be swept back against the vehicle prior to translunar injection burn to prevent any loads from breaking or damaging the arrays. And on the end of each solar array is a camera that will capture imagery for us throughout the mission, along with a few other cameras placed outside and inside the spacecraft to help us monitor and perform various other inspections. Of course, if you recall the Apollo capsule design, there were no solar arrays. We had fuel cells instead. So this design with arrays gives us the opportunity to stay in orbit longer since we practically have no limit to the energy available for use from the sun. Coming up on 21 minutes since liftoff. Orion is attached to the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. You can see those 4 solar arrays unfolding now. And again, Artemis I is a flight test. It's paving the way for a sustainable presence at the moon. Looking forward to the future, Gateway will be our space station in lunar orbit. And we have some similarities and differences in the solar arrays unfolding right now on Orion and those that'll be on Gateway. So like we're seeing now, these are deploying autonomously. The Gateway solar arrays will as well. Those 11 rollout solar arrays on Gateway will generate 60 kilowatts of power. That ROSA design is currently being tested aboard the space station. We have 2 new ones installed and a spacewalk conducted earlier today, preparing for another set. Coming up on 22 minutes since liftoff today, Orion and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage traveling over 16,800 miles per hour. The solar arrays deploying now are part of the European service module. It's comprised of 20,000 parts and components. The service module was developed as part of an agreement between NASA and the European Space Agency, or ESA. This is the first time NASA is using a European-built system as a critical element to power an American spacecraft. Coming up now, and 24 minutes into the flight of Artemis I, spacecraft now traveling at 16,500 miles per hour around the Earth. We are in solar array deploy, and we have confirmation all 4 arrays are deployed. Coming up in a little less than 30 minutes is the perigee raise maneuver. And with our launch at 1:41 Eastern Time this morning, we are looking for a perigee raise maneuver about 53 minutes into today's flight. Again, we are now 25 minutes and 47 seconds into the flight, and we have a complete deployment of all 4 solar arrays. Orion's journey to the moon continues as planned. Again, looking forward to that perigee raise maneuver. That'll be coming up again at about 53 minutes into the mission, so about 27 minutes from now. During the perigee raise maneuver, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage will use its RL-10 engine to lift the lowest point of Orion in Earth's orbit. The current orbit is more of an oval shape than a perfect circle, and this burn will raise that point closest to Earth and make the orbit more circular. This will also include a checkout of Orion's systems and any adjustments to the solar arrays. It'll be a short burn, less than 30 seconds long, but critical to keep us on track, and it also prepares us for the next engine burn to send Orion to the moon. That's the translunar injection burn. That'll come up a little later, which is a longer burn, another firing of the RL-10 engine on the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. We caught a glimpse there of those solar arrays, and with all 4 solar arrays properly deployed, Orion's journey to the moon continues, and we've got more operational updates coming up shortly, but for now, I'm going to toss it back to Megan and Kayla at Kennedy.
Leah, thank you so much. Our return to the moon will be different than the last time. We plan to explore more of the lunar surface and learn how to live and work there. With more on our destination, let's bring back NASA's Dan Hewitt with our new moon board.
Hey, thanks, Megan. I gotta be honest, we ran outside to catch it. I'm still shaking a little bit. That never gets old. That is always one of the coolest things you'll ever see in your entire life. And that rocket was massive and loud and just so cool. All right, the moon. This is why we call it the moon board, but the moon, since the dawn of time, humans have looked at the sky and shouted at our neighbor, "I'm going to walk in your face." And in the 60s, we actually did it. 6 times, starting with Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Apollo 11, 1969, followed by 5 more successive landings, each time delivering 2 human beings
just amazing. I don't know about you guys, but
They're nodding along behind you, for sure. Anything you want to say to the launch team? Again, this is a big day for the launch team, for you guys, NASA, but really the whole world. I mean, this is a